Hello and Assalamu alaikum. My name is Tariq Ahmed, and this is the 7th episode of The Democratic Way. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode, for subscribing at taraqa.substack.com or at the YouTube channel if you prefer YouTube, Freed by Islam. Thank you so much again for subscribing, for following this series, for watching for the first time, if this is your first time, for sharing it with people, for liking, for commenting. I really appreciate and read the comments that I get. Thank you so much. My name again is Tariq, and the Arabs had a prayer: "Oh Allah, protect us from every Tariq except the one who brings good." And I ask Allah to make me a Tariq who brings good in the course of this podcast, in the content that I share. And I believe that that requires being kind. The Prophet of Allah taught us that kindness is not to be found in anything, but that it adds to its beauty, and it is not withdrawn from anything, but it makes it defective. And I've personally seen in political discourse a tremendous lack of kindness. And I am myself guilty of it in the past, and I'm doing my best to avoid it in the future. So please hold me to account if you feel that I'm unkind to the subject matter or to you in the course of this episode of this podcast. I really, really intend only to do good and only to be kind. And that means I intend to be kind as I can be to Bill Clinton, because Bill Clinton is the subject of today's podcast episode. We've been talking about the Democratic leadership in past episodes of the podcast series. I want to make sure that everyone knows that, in my opinion, there has not been a more consequential president than Bill Clinton in the modern era, and certainly none of the presidents that we've had, Democratic presidents in particular, have been as consequential as Bill Clinton for what it means to be a Democratic leader and what it means to be a Democratic presidential candidate. Bill Clinton really, really put his mark on the party and put his mark on party leadership. So much so, when he won this election, this was the 1992 election, when he won this election, it so impressed Tony Blair, who was in labor, not in labor, like pregnant, but he was in the Labour Party in England. So much impressed him that he came to America with his team just to study how Bill Clinton set his policies, how he brought the Democratic Party to the right, because Bill Clinton intentionally cast himself to the right, and he did that even during the primary. He set himself as being the most, he didn't use these words that I want to be the most Republican candidate, but he set himself to be far to the right on domestic policies, and he wanted to be perceived that way so much that he was to the right of all the people who are on the screen, basically. The Democratic primary in 1992 was heavily contested, was very well contested. Look, we have to talk about the 1992 election and the 1992 primary, not because it's important to me, but because you've already seen some interesting things. If you recall previous episodes of the podcast series, first of all, on this screen, there's another face. It's not just two faces. It's Ross Perot. And over here, look, we've been talking about 2 or 3 choices for Democrats, but now there were 5 real strong candidates in 1992. And there were other strong candidates who didn't even get into the race in 1992. And they didn't do it because they were afraid of George Bush. So, that's amazing. And that's something that we will talk about, but not today. Today, we're talking about Bill Clinton. And as I said, he tacked to the right. And here's one example of how he did it. Bill Clinton didn't win every single primary. There were like 35 primaries in 1992. He didn't win all the primaries, but very importantly, in 1992, the Democratic Party allowed a candidate who could win 15% of the vote in a primary to get a share of the delegates from that state. So through the course of the primaries, even from the beginning, Bill Clinton would maybe come in third in a primary in the beginning, and he would get a small share of delegates, and he would share, if you will, the other delegates with the people who finished higher than him. And then we come to Super Tuesday. Super Tuesday, how to get into that? When you have so many primaries, there didn't used to be so many primaries, but when you have so many primaries, then they have those elections have to be held on certain dates. Everybody wants to be on an important or auspicious date. So Super Tuesday is a day on which many states have their primaries together. I mean, on the same day. So before Super Tuesday, Bill Clinton wanted to set himself apart, and he really wanted to make it clear how conservative he was. And he really wanted to send a message to a particular group of voters, white voters. So he goes to Stone Mountain, Georgia. Stone Mountain is a mountain outside of Atlanta where in 1915, the Ku Klux Klan was revitalized with a ritual burning at the top of the mountain. It's a mountain, the face of which that faces Atlanta, or at least you can see from Atlanta, was turned into a giant monument to the Confederacy by an artist who's well known for his grand monuments. It's the same artist who did Mount Rushmore. Okay, so it's not the same kind of monument as Rushmore, except that they're both carvings in stone, right? So Rushmore is the busts of certain U.S. presidents. This is a relief that shows certain Confederate heroes in quotation marks. So he goes to Stone Mountain, which is, I mean, when I say like the Confederate, like the KKK is the largest, most violent, most dangerous over time white supremacist terrorist organization in the United States. Lynchings, burning crosses, terrorizing blacks in this country. Ones you've heard of, like Malcolm X, ones you've never heard of. Lynchings all over. I mean, he goes there in 1992. But he doesn't just go to Stone Mountain. He didn't attend a Klan rally, if that's what you're thinking that I'm saying. He didn't attend a Klan rally. But he goes to that mountain. The site that he's at, it's at the intersection of two streets, one of which is named for the KKK Grand Wizard who revitalized the KKK in 1915. So it's a campaign stop. He picked it. And those people behind him, those are not milkmen. Those are not delivery drivers. Those are prison inmates. This is the Stone Mountain Boys Boot Camp, a small Georgia state correctional facility. Those are inmates. And as you can see, most of them are black. And the men around Bill Clinton are conservative Democrats. Commentators have compared this image to white overseers who are, I mean, it's just a horrible image in terms of race relations. And yet, amazingly, Bill Clinton not only pulls off this stunt, but he manages to win 70% of the vote of black Americans in the 1992 elections. So he very successfully sells this message to white Americans that he will be tough on crime, which is a dog whistle for being tough on blacks, especially when you're standing in the picture the way that you are, in the place that you are. But I mean, he is so focused on not looking like he's weak on crime, and with that same quotation marks, he goes back from the campaign trail to Arkansas in order to execute someone on death row. This is a person whose, appeals had expired. He didn't have any more appeals, and unlucky for him, his execution date was in 1992, and there's no way that Bill Clinton was going to pass up the opportunity to execute someone no matter what, because he certainly wasn't going to try. He wasn't going to let himself be cast as a Michael Dukakis. Michael Dukakis was the Democratic nominee in 1988 and failed miserably against George Bush. And part of the reason was how he was portrayed as being weak on crime. Unjustly, perhaps, but he was definitely portrayed that way, and he was horrible as a politician, was not able to get out from under that at all. Bill Clinton wasn't going to do that, so he does this, which is unnecessary, and he kills a death row inmate on his execution by not granting him clemency, no matter how many people were asking for it. And why am I bringing this up? I mean, it's a death row inmate, right? It's a person who was convicted and sentenced for crimes, and those crimes were not committed in 1992. Those crimes were committed in 1981. Why is this significant? Well, that criminal, his name, Ricky Ray Rector. I needed to read it because it would be really easy to mess up the name. He committed those violent crimes in 1981. No one's disputing that. But before he was caught by the police, he shot himself. Whether he was trying to kill himself or not, what happens? He becomes essentially lobotomized. He shot himself in the bullet messes up his head. He's got brain damage. And by the time of his, certainly by the time of his execution, he was utterly incompetent. People were begging Bill Clinton to give clemency, to prevent the execution, and he refused to do it. The Supreme Court refused to give cert, and that basically means that the Supreme Court also refused to intervene. That's the best way to look at those words without describing, a lot of legal concepts right now. So Bill Clinton had the opportunity to prevent this execution and chose not to, right? Because he wanted to send that message, that tough on crime message. You can say what you want about whether it was right for Bill Clinton to kill this person, but I mean, we are not talking about a person who was competent at all during his own trial. Okay, much less who was aware of himself when he was executed. So Bill Clinton went ahead and executed the man and did what he did at Stone Mountain, won all those Southern primaries, became the Democratic nominee. And one of his campaign promises was to end welfare as we know it. This is another example of how far to the right Bill Clinton was of other nominees, how far to the right he was of the traditional Democratic Party. The welfare net that he wanted to get rid of the safety net, basically, that Democrats since Franklin Delano Roosevelt had gradually brought into place. Not just Franklin Delano Roosevelt, but other Democrats after him in Congress, in the presidency, had taken care of Americans who were poor, the working poor in particular, and helped them. I mean, since the Depression, just imagine how difficult it was for America to get itself out of the Depression. The safety nets were good policies that protected people, but he characterized them as wasteful spending on welfare queens. It's another group of tropes that he brought out that basically made it look like black people were wasting welfare dollars. And that's in 1992 when, again, not to anyone's surprise, if you actually understand the facts, Most of the people on welfare were white. So, I mean, it's astonishing. This is the Bill Clinton who won the Democratic nomination, the Bill Clinton who won the 1992 election, the Bill Clinton whose leadership team was studied by Tony Blair, the Bill Clinton whose leadership team in his campaign goes into the White House with him and helps him enact the policies that we're going to talk about in the next episode. The leadership team, the Democratic Party leadership that we still have today, either members of that team or the people trained by that team that were part of the Clinton family, not in the literal sense, but Clinton political family. I mean, this man's effect on the Democratic Party it's really something that we have to appreciate. So we're going to talk about it. Hopefully it will just take one more episode, but it might even take two. We're going to talk about domestic policy in particular in the next episode. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you will at least agree that I've tried to be as kind as I can to Bill Clinton in the course of this episode. It really does mean a lot to me, so let me know. Thank you.